Hello there, this is Stormdog, and I am a huge John Woo fan. Around the time of college, I wanted to find more great action movies. Some of the biggest ones in my life at the time were The Matrix, Die Hard, and Aliens. After some research online, I found that a lot of, at the time, modern action movie hits borrowed a lot from foreign movies, especially Hong Kong. That's when I discovered A Better Tomorrow. The amazing action sequences, the sacrifices of characters, and the heavy themes of brotherhood gripped me. In so much of Woo's directorial work you can see this, at least until he went into America. All these elements are just something HK cinema throughout the 80s and 90s handled better than possibly American cinema ever has. The film introduced me to the most iconic role by Chow Yun-fat, and now here I am as Stormdog. Woo had so many amazing hits around that time that I loved, and many of them involved Chow Yun-fat. From the first two A Better Tomorrows, yes, I still love the third, to the heavy themes of The Killer, or even the action spectacle with surprising depth of Hard Boiled, or even seemingly lighter fare with great twists of Once a Thief, Woo had so many amazing hits that I love. Before this in the industry, he did a lot more comedy or action comedy, aping a lot of what silent film America had done many years previous. After this, Woo came to the States for various reasons, and while many of his films are considered good, if not with a bit of their own weirdness, none quite measured up ever again. Hard Target, Face Off, Broken Arrow, and my favorite, Mission Impossible 2, with all of these, Woo never quite hit those solid scripts and emotional performances that I feel his movies had in Hong Kong. After these, he directed Paycheck and Windtalkers, but neither left much of a legacy. Most of his work afterwards was back in Asia, and we've gotten the two Red Cliff movies, which are good historical pieces, and the film Manhunt, which, in comparison to his classics, falls short. There is one film I saw of his that came highly recommended, but upon first viewing in college did not excite me like the others. Bullet to the Head came out in 1990 and wasn't completely successful. This actually leads to many of his reasons for moving to America. It's a film with incredible action, like you'd expect from Woo, easily measuring up to his other films, maybe even surpassing in some moments like the outright war zones. Classic Woo movies will always provide a form of action and kineticism, especially in gunfights rarely seen anywhere else. Honestly though, even B-grade Hong Kong films of the 80s and 90s have twice as much energy as many American action films of the last 20 years. Many of the reasons behind this are the same reasons Jackie Chan's HK films are way above any fight scene done in America, at least big budget. There was much more freedom in methods and schedule of filmmaking. The action in this movie, Bullet to the Head, is absolutely captivating because of the director. I've read some behind the scenes on the movie Face Off about the unexplainable understanding Woo had about camera placement for action scenes. On his first American film, Hard Target, the movie was sent back more than 5 times by the ratings committee to avoid an NC-17 rating for violence. The squib work in this one is amazing, with a scene the director himself played in and got shot point blank multiple times with squibs and a blank firing gun. While technically safe, it left him quite bruised with torn clothes. This may be the movie Woo put himself into more than any other. Every one of his classic HK films has gunfights like you've never seen, but this one has full-blown war zones. I thought the first gunfight in the film was going to be the high point of the movie, due to its scope, how overwhelming it was, and the amount of work put into it. The movie continued to surprise me and had me captivated. It's been almost 10 years since I saw it, and it is and will be one of the top 5 movies I see this year. My takeaway and feelings about it as a younger man were completely off. The gunfights are astounding, but the early gang fights are wonderful in their impact and violence. The earliest fights remind me of West Side Story or Rebel Without a Cause. That is one of the major differences with Woo as a director. The action scenes of his classics have weight because of how much the preceding drama has made you care about the characters and situations. The first, A Better Tomorrow, has long spurts between action scenes and makes the action all that much heavier. I would argue the hand-to-hand fights in Bullet to the Head are better than the hand-to-hand fights in A Better Tomorrow, and that feels like sacrilege to say anything less than complimentary about A Better Tomorrow. The action of this movie is definitely a reason to watch. One of the reasons I did not prefer this movie on first viewing is how heartbreaking a movie it is. This time I knew it going in. It's definitely called heroic bloodshed as a genre for a reason. The movie deals with three friends who grow up in Hong Kong together. They end up wanted by the police due to gang violence, and flee to Vietnam during the Vietnam War or the Second Indochina War. While there, they see political violence in the streets, get into a war with the local crime boss, and end up in a POW camp run by the Viet Cong. This movie truly is a tragedy closer to Woo's earlier film, Heroes Shed No Tears, and how merciless it can be. Some movies like The Killer, and really all three of the A Better Tomorrows, touch on this level of pain and hurt, but not like Bullet to the Head and Heroes Shed No Tears. John Woo based much of the film, the first act in particular, on his own experiences growing up in the slums of Hong Kong. He said, "Our family was so poor, we had to go to the back of restaurants for leftovers to keep from starving. The place I lived had no trees, no blue skies, no sunshine. There were buildings everywhere. It always rained. When I stepped out the front door into the alley, the junkies would be injecting themselves with heroin. When you turned around, there would be people gambling, beating each other up for 10 cents. Every time I walked through an alley, I assumed I was going to be beaten up. Growing up in that environment, I saw only a cruel and depressed world. I was in hell too long. I tried to work out of the ugliness of that world in Bullet. It was an intense experience, but very rewarding for me." John Woo based two of the main characters, Frank and Paul, on friends of his. One friend became the leader of a triad gang, while the other became a drug addict. John Woo rewrote much of the script to incorporate his reaction to the massacre in Tiananmen Square in Beijing. Woo has described this project as his equivalent of Apocalypse Now, as it had the same exhausting and draining effect on him as that film had on Francis Ford Coppola. Like John Woo's previous film, The Killer, this did not do well in Hong Kong because audiences did not like the allusions to the Tiananmen Square massacre during the riot scenes. Woo was deeply affected by the massacre and felt badly that he touched such a raw nerve in people, but at the same time he felt the Chinese people should react and not hide from it. Somewhere around this time, Woo and Tsui Hark, one of Hong Kong's greatest directors, stopped working together. After the breakup with his partnership with Tsui Hark, John Woo was having trouble finding backing for his films. Stories have circulated that Tsui, once again one of the most powerful men in Hong Kong cinema, said Woo was hard to work with, and this led to a virtual blacklisting of Woo. At any rate, Woo financed almost all the costs of the movie out of his own pocket. The movie was originally planned to be a prequel to A Better Tomorrow, but a falling out between Woo and the producer, Hark, prevented this from happening. Woo reworked the script into what it became, and Tsui made his own prequel, A Better Tomorrow 3, Love and Death in Saigon. I never realized this until researching the script, and now that movie, A Better Tomorrow 3, holds so much more sadness for me than it already did. The movie is such a gut punch, and the behind-the-scenes story on it only makes it more so. Woo's original cut of Bullet in the Head was over 3 hours long. Much like he was forced to do with A Better Tomorrow 2, Woo reluctantly recut the film down to a little over 2 hours long running time, but as Woo himself confirmed, the version of the movie that was premiered in Hong Kong the day before it was actually released was 2 hours and 35 minutes long. It was decided this version was still too long, so all the prints of the film had to be re-edited and delivered back to the cinemas all over Hong Kong by the next day. Even after all the re-edits that movie already made, many other different cuts of it were made due to local market and censorship, which is why even today there are many different versions of the film with different running times. Since it had been so radically cut down, there are some still photos of the film which indicate that entire subplots have been removed from the film, which aren't even referenced in the final cut. On one such photo, you can see Tony Leung's face in bandages, his girlfriend standing near him. This is from a subplot in which Ben's face got burnt with acid by a rival gang. Some of the other cut scenes also include cuts made on some of the more violent scenes in the film. The Hong Kong trailer for the film showed some of these alternate takes and edits, and 3 deleted scenes. During the Vietnam protestation sequence, one protester is being clubbed to death on the head by members of the Vietnamese troops while blood is gushing out of his head. Also, the infamous deleted scene where Ben, Frank, and Paul are forced in the club to drink urine after Mr. Leung suspects them of wanting to take Sally's character away from him. This scene was actually mentioned by Chow Yun-fat's character Mark in A Better Tomorrow, building the fact that this would have been originally a prequel to that film. And there was an extra part of the Bolero Club action sequence where Frank is armed with 2 pistols and is shooting at a long array of Vietnamese men who are standing in the corridor. So there's a lot of different cuts there and different little pieces that have become lost to time. Some versions of the film also include an alternate, shorter ending, which doesn't end with Ben chasing Paul in the car and them having a climactic showdown and shootout, but instead in this alternate ending, spoilers, Ben kills Paul in the boardroom after he shows him Frank's skull, a lot of spoilers there, sorry, and tells him what happened to him. John Woo secretly hoped that as soon as he got to Hollywood, he would acquire the rights to his old films, including this one, and be able to put back in all those scenes that he was forced to cut. But when he tried to do so, he was told that all the material he had cut hadn't been preserved, but instead ended up straight in the garbage bin. However, sometime later, Woo created what would become known as the Festival print, which was the longest version of the movie seen since the original Hong Kong premiere and was 136 minutes long, and included the infamous urine drinking scene. It has been since illegally released on a bootleg VHS. Another 135-minute version released on DVD has been sold legally to the public and has been distributed by Joy Sales, and this ultimate 2-disc edition has seamless branching, which can be shown in its theatrical version, the parts from the alternate ending version, the festival print version, but the deleted scenes do maintain a blue tint to them, possibly from the chemicals originally used, and also some frame jumping, just because of film preservation that was done too many years later by the director himself, mostly because he was given too late an opportunity. The cast in this is brilliant and has many actors Woo worked with on many of his other classics. Chow Yun-fat was originally going to play Luke, a character added once the 3 friends reach Vietnam, as he was really impressed with the script, but Woo told him that his character was not the essential character of the story. He was a very pivotal one nonetheless, and that it might not have complemented at the time his leading man status, as it was really a supporting role, or by argument a 4th leading role, depending who you ask. As one of the 3 main friends, we have Tony Leung, and I hate that most Americans are only familiar with him due to the recent Shang-Chi movie, which is one of his weakest works due to the studio he's working with. Please, at least check him out in Infernal Affairs. He was in both Red Cliff movies, also directed by Woo. He was in Hero with Jet Li, Ashes of Time, My Heart is That Eternal Rose, The Longest Night, Seven Warriors, which I made a video on, but my favorite performance of his is in the movie Hard Boiled, which of course he did with John Woo as the director. Remember, the movies I mentioned are more so my personal recommendation of the actor's work. Jackie Cheung plays one of the three other friends, and Cheung and Leung later played together in Ashes of Time, The Eagle Shooting Heroes, and Seven Warriors. There it is again. He was in the second A Chinese Ghost Story, and the third one, Bodyguards and Assassins with Donnie Yen, High Risk with Jet Li, which is an excellent Die Hard knockoff that was supposed to parody Jackie Chan. Long story, anyway. Future Cops, which is a wacky comedy, Once Upon a Time in China, just the first one, also with Jet Li, the first Swordsman movie, but was replaced with Jet Li for the rest of the trilogy, and the first Tiger Cage movie. Wei's Lee is the last of the three friends. He did a lot of work with Woo, having a similar role in A Better Tomorrow, which was actually his acting debut. He plays a cop in The Big Heat, was in the Stephen Chow comedy Tricky Brains, was also in the second two A Chinese Ghost Story films, was in the Johnny To film Running Out of Time, Swordsman 2, and was a staple of smaller HK films throughout the 80s, but is still very active in the industry today. Simon Yam plays their friend Luke, who they meet in Vietnam. He was in the first Lara Croft movie, and those two there are my preferred Tomb Raider movies. He was recently in Raging Fire with Donnie Yen, and has done a few films with Yen, like Iceman the Time Traveler, the first Iceman film, Bodyguards and Assassins, the first two Ip Man movies, Killzone 1 and 2, as well as being in Yen film sequels that don't actually have Donnie in them, like the aforementioned Killzone 2 and Chasing the Dragon 2. He's been in many of the PTU films, and so many other great films, too many to cover. I do want to mention his role as the villain in the Chow Yun-fat movie Full Contact, though. His role in that one is excellently over the top. Simon Yam did accidentally get burned in the face while filming one of the action scenes in Bullet to the Head. Sadly, he did not get much publicity from this movie, despite, in my opinion, him being the most capable character in the film. The film is a tragic drama of hardship, with incredible action scenes, and it captivates for its every moment, even if you already know what's coming. And I'm so glad I rewatched it, and have moved my IMDb rating from a 5 to an 8. It's a heartfelt drama, it's a powerful anti-war movie, and an awe-inspiring action movie. Between the action, the director's journey and hopes for the movie, and the cast itself, there are many reasons to watch Bullet in the Head. The film is my biggest blunder in this particular director's catalog, and one I was enriched by correcting. And until next time, this has been Stormdog.
Mày lười sao? Hãy chỉ nghe em tại được à?